everyone, and welcome to Coproduce Care's Chat for Care. My name's Sophie Chester-Glynn, and I am Director at Coproduce Care. And as many of you will know who've been tuning into our live streams over the last few weeks, or maybe it's even over a month now that we've been doing these, we are a non-profit organisation made up of people who work in social care and volunteers, and we have an apprentice that helps us. And really, I started Coproduce Care because I wear another hat, and that's as a care provider. And I just felt that last year when we set it up, there wasn't really much for social care in terms of talking about the issues that we have, understanding the concepts behind care, and just really hearing more voices of people who are involved, experiencing and doing the work of caring. So that's why we set up Coproduce Care. We've done some videos in the past that you can view on our YouTube channel, so do check that out. But as soon as COVID hit us a few months ago, we went on to live streams for a couple of reasons, just so people can get involved and comment in the comment section and get involved in the discussions that we're having, but also it's easy for us to edit because there's no editing. We just go live, it gets saved and people can watch it. So hopefully you'll get involved in what we're doing tonight, and you'll ask questions or have comments and keep that going, because it always makes it a more relaxed and enjoyable live stream if everyone who's watching gets involved as well. So thank you all for tuning in. A few housekeeping things. Of course, if you are watching us on Twitter, we're streaming on Periscope, so please do share and like the video. And if you've got other colleagues who might want to listen in, then do just whiz the link across to them and get people coming along to the Coproduce Care Chat for Care. Also, if you're on Facebook, then please do like our page, and on YouTube, subscribe, please, if you can. We want as many people to hear about what we're talking about here and to join in the social care mainly, which is what we talk about, debate. So we can't do that if people don't see it. So, you know, none of us are really getting paid for what we're doing. We're just doing this because we want to open up the debate. But we would love if people could subscribe, because that brings more people to the channel. It makes sure people can see what we're doing. And obviously we can open up the care debate a bit more that way. So that's all of that done. Hello there's people tuning in. Thank you for saying hi. So there is a chat. Do get involved with that. And this evening we have the pleasure of welcoming two fantastic guests, Isaac Samuels and Sally Percival. Both are fantastic advocates for social care. Isaac, you'll hear from in a moment, is always advocating for better rights, for personalisation, person-centred care. He also is an expert by experience, so we're honoured to have him on. Also, we are going to be talking to Sally Percival. You may know her. She's been a carer, and she's also a massive advocate for better rights for people. And so a fantastic two guests on with us this evening. So do get involved, do engage with what we're doing. Sorry, excuse me. And we also we'll be talking about different issues around personalisation and being a carer and experiencing care and what should we do in the future. So there's going to be a lot to discuss coming up. So what I will do is just welcome Isaac. Hello, Isaac. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm really honoured, and it's such a great space to be in. So I think I first of all want to really big up all the unpaid carers out there, because this week is a really important week in recognising that for me and people like me that have care and support needs, unpaid carers play a really important role along with paid care. So I just want to kind of big up all the unpaid carers out there, Sally, everybody, and just say how much you make a difference for people with care and support needs. And don't ever forget that. Personalisation has been a rocky road. So as someone that's been involved in personalisation for 20 years. We've seen good, bad and challenging times, and we are most definitely in some challenging times, but more than ever, personalisation. And when I say personalisation, it's a really big word. What I mean is, how do I have the best possible life, and what support and people do I need in my life to make that happen? Because often my long-term health and social care challenges, so my mental health, my physical health, can often prevent me doing things that you and I take for granted. And without paid care, that would be impossible. But without unpaid care and unpaid carers and people that care for me, that would just be impossible. So I would not have the great life that I have, and I have a really great life. So thank you, everybody, for all of your help.
Thank you so much, Isaac. That's just so warming to hear you say that. And also to give a shout out to those carers, because like you say, it is Carers Week. This is why it's the perfect panel, if you like, to have on this evening. So I wondered whether we could start off really with explaining your journey a little bit, and your contact with care services and how they've been maybe not so great, but also helped you going forward.
So I am somebody that I've accessed care and support services of some kind for about 20 years. And I've had some good experiences, and I won't deny that, but largely until I discovered a thing called direct payments, I had really negative experiences. And I think those experiences were based on the assumption that people understood what I needed, but not only what I needed, that there was a off-the-shelf solution. So it's kind of like going into a shop and wanting a size 8 red boots and being given a size 11 black boots. And that's kind of how my journey always felt. It was that everything was really prescribed, everything was delivered in a way that didn't make sense to me and didn't really recognize me as a unique individual, but didn't at all recognize the people around me, and really focused on finishing tasks. So when I refer to finishing tasks, what I really mean is it focused on getting washed and dressed, or not feeling suicidal, the minimization of negative symptoms around mental health, rather than what does a good life look like, Isaac? And that means, for me, being connected to people that I love and care for, having the same opportunities, being able to do really simple things. So I talk about kind of getting up every day, and I'm always grateful. So I get up every day and I have this book called Acts of Faith, and I read a page and I look out of my window and I think, you know, just opening my curtains is a big thing for me, because there was a really long period of my life where I didn't leave my house. I wasn't able to function in the way that I needed to function or wanted to function. And the only difference that happened along my journey is that I had the right care and support, and I found people that could support me on that journey, and they really understood me. So it is, for me, personalisation more than ever. And I think we need to look at the current context of COVID. Personalisation makes sense. I have a PA that has walked to my home every single day and gone above and beyond what you could expect a PA to do, because we've built a relationship over 5 years. I trust him with my life. I say to him stuff like, you know, we need to think about, you know, people like me are shielding. We need to think about, oh, how do we both keep safe? Because of the relationship we've developed over all these years, that's implicit that I know he's got my best interests at heart. And then I think about all of the people that are in my life that offer me unpaid care and what they've done in recent times. And we've moved into a place in our lifetimes that we never thought that we'd be in. And that place for me is, how do we ensure that everybody has the best possible lives? And personalisation was one of those things that I've banged on about for years and years and years. but actually it works. I'm here today because of personalisation. I haven't got coronavirus because I've been able to adapt my care and support. I've been able to lean on those informal carers. I've been able to lean on those formal carers. I've been able to do it based on my needs. It's not based on a local government policy. It's based on what's right for me, what's right for my family. But it doesn't disable me, it enables me. And the biggest thing is, how do we access the support we need in an enabling way? And I will often talk about my PAs are quite interesting, because I don't want PAs that don't push me. So I need a lot of kind of pushing and supporting. And I can be quite, you know, when you're in pain, sometimes you kind of want to disengage or switch off, but actually having a PA that understands pain, having a PA that understands mental health, having a support network that really wants you to have the best possible day, and knowing that someone's got your back regardless of how you're feeling or how you're behaving is so important.
That is such a powerful thing to hear. And I suppose, and for you to share, and I think also just hearing from somebody who's actually receiving care services of any kind is so powerful, because we often don't hear from people with lived experience. We often hear from the people at the top, if you like, or people who are commenting on the social care landscape. But actually, for someone to say, this is what it means to me, this is how I'm living it and feeling it, I think that's really powerful, and it's great that you're sharing that with us. And I just wonder, in terms of personalisation, when you talk about that, that's having a package of funding that you are able to use and employ your own staff. Is that the part of it? Yeah. That gives you power.
It totally is. And thank you for asking that question. For me, it's actually a mindset. So from someone that accessed his, you know, packages of care that were based around organizations, moving into a space where I was directing it, one was, oh my God, I can't believe this is possible. Two, it was freeing. It felt so free. I can't emphasize enough how we might need to rethink some of the kind of thinking around care and support. So I think about, for me, what care and support has meant is that this individuals have been able to support me in a way that makes sense to me. They've been there when I've needed them. They've been able to step back. It's built over a long period of time in a relationship. It's proactive, not reactive. It's centered around my needs, but also, I don't normally talk about it, but you know, it's cost effective, it's time effective, it's enabling. It's enabled me to step into a place that makes total sense for me, but makes sense for everybody in my network and my community. And the really interesting thing about personalization is I'm not wasting the opportunities, the limited opportunities I have. I've got, 3 or 4 hours in a day where I've got really good energy, and to have that support around that, and to think about, what are the things that I can practically do? What are the things that I need support doing? And how does the support step in when I can't do those things, but also when I can step back? And that is so unique. The relationships between PAs are just so unique. The amount of mental health, and you can't train this kind of stuff in. You can't do train. You can do training, but for me, it's long-term investment in people and relationships. The human-to-human stuff is so important.
There's so much that I'm hearing doing these chats about people talking about being more human and just breaking it down into relationships. I talked to a researcher called Toby Lowe last week, and he talked about commissioning and his theory is around human learning systems. So we're thinking about how we create those relationships in our community, rather than just, like you were saying at the beginning, commissioning someone to just give medication or to bath someone, or because what are the other things that we can help people with which will prevent them needing any further support, because they feel a little bit more supported in their own community. So it's interesting that you are totally agreeing with that. So that's really good to hear about your personal experience. You have given us a photo to share with you. Can you explain this one?
So this is me in recent years, I've been heavily involved in carnival and costume design. And so I just want to invite you into a bit of a space. So I remember coming out of hospital and receiving a package of care via a big care provider, and this person turning up and telling me that they were here for 45 minutes. And in that 45 minutes, I would need to shower. And they expected me to stay in the shower for 45 minutes. And that was the start of the journey for me around personalization, because that did not make sense to me. That did not meet my needs. And on that journey, I've realized that actually nobody was asking me what was important to me. So people were focused on how does Isaac get up, get dressed, manage his mental health, but they weren't asking me what was important to me. And what's important to me is to be able to do the things that are creative. So that picture represents my recent journey into kind of costume and carnival making. And so I met a PA, I met a person called Hazel Goldman, who is a local community member that also does some PAing for me. And I'm less dependent on kind of paid services, because actually I can connect with someone because of the bit of support that I have at home to do things that are really fun and interesting. And my self-esteem and self-worth has just, rocketed because of those natural connections. It's not at all about, just paid support. It's about having a life. I'm the first person that would say, and anyone that knows me would say, that actually, when people have the right support, it makes such a difference. And often people don't have that right support. But for me, only personalization has ever addressed that issue. And I've been able to get the right support. I've been able to hire people based on their beliefs, their skills, their personalities, their time commitment, their interests. And it sounds really strange, but actually being able to connect with somebody when they're offering you such intimate support over something that you both share in common and enjoyment changes the dynamic. Having someone that speaks to you as a human being rather than a service user or a client is totally different. And I think that commissioners and service providers, and I'm not knocking any system or way of providing care, I'm just talking about what works for me is having that person-centered approach that I self-direct and I choose who comes into my life and I have control. And the people that I choose not only work with me, but work with my support network. I don't think I would get that. Well, I know I wouldn't get that if I was accessing an agency. I think they would be very focused on task and finish.
Yes, that's very interesting. And I wonder, with everything that you've done, you're doing really well, and it seems like a really positive story. But you haven't finished there. You've decided to see how you can change things for other people. So could you maybe talk about what you've been doing outside of making sure that you've got the right support, and tell us all the organizations that you've been involved with?
So I think we have to start off with, when people find themselves needing care and support, it can be the most traumatic, stressful time of their lives. And we start off from a place. I started off knowing nothing about the care sector, nothing about how I would get through this. I was just trying to get through day by day. And what I realized was that there was a space, and that space was that not many people asked people what they thought about the services they were receiving or the people that were involved in their lives. And I thought, actually, there's something missing here, because actually, how do you know what is right for me if you don't ask me? And I got that bug, and I suppose it's called the co-production bug, where I believe that the more space we create, the more opportunity for people to self-determine what's right for them, the better it is for all of us. It's not about care and support. It's about living as good neighbours, parents, friends, going into education and work and all those things really go back to that human connection. And I really believe that with elevating the voice of people that access service and services, and then shaping and designing, co-creating, and these are all big words, what I really want to say is that you cannot possibly meet my needs without it coming from me and you having a conversation with me and me being part of that shaping of that. And I think of it very much that I'm an expert because I've lived and breathed it, and that's really good. And there are experts by training, and together, if we come together and we come into a space that we really are creating hopeful spaces, and we're really trying to do the best thing for everybody, and particularly the people that are on the receiving end, we end up coming to a place where we're just getting people's needs met, rather than commissioning services that don't meet people's needs, rather than making assumptions about what people need. It has to stem from what people need, and it has to stem from those human-to-human relationships. I hope that answered your question.
It did a little bit, but also don't be modest. You're also speaking to people who are influencers and you're trying to give them a bit of a lived experience type view of how to cope in the COVID or 19 sphere, and just generally there's a lot of stuff that you're doing.
It's a hard space. I'm not going to be dishonest. It's a hard space because there is a reality and rhetoric gap. And to inhabit that space is really challenging because I inhabit it knowing that everybody's trying to do the best that they can, but systems can often prevent that. So for me, how do we get a whole response in terms of a national response, a local response, a human response that meets people's needs? And you only do that by being the person that champions voice. So for me, we can't do any of this unless we hear from, people that have direct experience of care and support. We can't definitely do this unless we hear from carers and PAs. And I think that the work that I do and the work that I do with Sally and other members of NCAG, the National Co-Production Advisory Group, is really creating space to shape the future of what social care should look like. And it should look like, for me, whatever it develops into, that voice of people has to be central to that. Co-production's messy, co-production's time consuming, but my God, you cannot get to where we want to get to, and that is a society where everyone's valued and everyone has the same opportunities without including those voices. You just can't get there. So you have to kind of embrace that. You have to really go into this work with the view of, let's lift up those voices, because not everybody has a voice, not everybody has the same opportunity. I would like to see more voice. I think that the people that I work with humble me on a daily basis, because what they do is they try to ensure that the voice of people is heard at every level.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard. And I think some people they look at it and they think, well, to engage with all these people is just too much. I look at a bi-weekly now care providers meeting that I chair in our local area about how we're beating COVID-19, and we don't include anybody with lived experience in that. It's purely providers, and it's nice we don't think about it, or people think it's too hard, but actually just saying to people how do you want us to support you is just really, that's what it's about. We get too hepped up in systems and how we're doing things and paperwork, and we just forget the really important stuff and the important people. So that was really helpful to tell us a bit about your experience and what you're doing, and definitely we want to hear more about the COVID response and things that are going on. But I thought maybe we could chat with Sally about that and about the future for personalisation. So I think there was one comment that someone put up, which I thought is worth just exploring. And talking about obviously how you've got your setup there and it's really successful and it meets your needs, but she does identify that you have to be super organized and up for it. I suppose there's an element of people thinking, well, are there other people who aren't able to be? I mean, is that true? Do you have to be quite organized to make sure that works for you? And also, what would you suggest for people who need to do what you're doing or would benefit from it, but who maybe struggle with the organization of it? Because it does seem quite a lot to have to manage.
So for me, when I started on this journey, that was the very question. That was the thing that prevented me most of all taking up personalization. I did not feel that I had the skill set. I did not feel that I would be organized. I did not feel that I would know. And really early on, I identified some allies, and those allies were experts by training, social worker called David. And I really stepped into this space of actually the type of support I have now is very different. And it's not, my support hasn't gone from a traditional package to a direct payment overnight. There's been various iterations of that. I've had support managing it. I've had support. I've created a circle of support around me to help me manage it when I'm not doing too well. So it's exploring those. There's no wrong or right way of doing this. What I would say is that I totally hear people's concerns. I totally understand it can be challenging, but for me and for every single person I know, it makes sense, it works, it's worth the investment. And this is the work that, you know, myself and Sally do, the peer support from other disabled people and people with care and support needs is instrumental in any of this, and fundamental to making this a success. So I've been able to reach out to other people and get the help that I need. I'm an advocate of personalised approach because that's why I'm sitting here today. I wouldn't be here today without it. They can be challenging, but they are so rewarding, and it is just to reach out and give things a try. It's testing out, seeing how it feels.
Yeah, that's lovely. And then someone else is just saying that there just needs to be a fundamental shift in what we think about care should be, and what we want what people want their care to be like. So huge conversations to be had, I think, after COVID, during COVID, I don't know, but it's nice that people are more interested in having these conversations, I think. And it's great to create a platform for that as well. So thank you so much. That's been really useful. We are going to talk with you a little bit more, but I do want to bring Sally in. So bye for now, but I will bring Sally in now. See you in a sec. So before we do anything, I've got to say that if it's your birthday, you often don't decide you want to be on a Co-Produce Care Chat for Care, but it is Sally's birthday and she's decided to be with us tonight. So we've got to give her kudos for that. It's amazing.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
I'm so sorry, Sally. I've really embarrassed you there, but we had to do something.
Oh, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's so sweet. Thank you very much indeed, Sophie.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Like I said, it's really very kind of you. So
I wasn't going to go out, Sophie.
This is the thing. What else are we going to do?
Yeah.
So I think it would be good, I think, just to explain to people what you do. I don't know whether you want to start with your role as a carer first, and your experiences. And I know we've got some slides and things to put up whilst you're talking through that. So over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Sophie. So yes, as Sophie says, and as Isaac mentioned, I'm a carer. And it is National Carers Week, and it's all about making the invisible carer visible. And so I hope this goes in part to make all those unpaid carers a little bit more visible. So my journey of care started nearly 30 years ago when I had my son, whose name is Alex. And very quickly I realized that he had something that was stopping him developing, and was making him behave in certain ways that I thought was unusual. And of course, time moved on, and he has now got a diagnosis of autism and learning disability and mental health conditions. And after an assessment from social care, he was given a service. And so this is my interpretation of why personalised care and support is so important. So he was given a service that really didn't meet his needs, and he had behaviour issues anyway. And these carers would come in. Sometimes they would think they were caring for me. Alex would end up hiding under his bed, crying, and the carer would go home. And it was a real lose-lose situation, and it wasn't working. And it took quite a long time for us to just take a deep breath and for someone to mention person-centred planning. So I then embarked on finding out all about direct payments and person-centred planning. And we asked Alex those wonderful questions one day. What is it you want to do? And Alex, here's Alex. Oh, he was lonely. He was bored. You know, I love a good McDonald's, but when you go in McDonald's every blooming day for your tea with your carer, he just didn't have a life. Absolutely didn't have a life. And very quickly we realized that we could employ our own staff. Alex told us that he really loved reenacting. He's passionate about World War II. And so we thought, okay, let's join the reenacting community. We employed a PA from that reenacting community. And my goodness, life took off for Alexander. No longer was he the, here he is on the reenacting field. No longer was he the really unhappy, bored young man. He was happy. He had the right support from his PA, and life dramatically changed for us as a family because he was getting good quality support. And whereas when he'd been going out with the service that he'd been given, I felt guilty. I knew that if we did manage to get him out, when he came home, he would have an autistic meltdown, and it was so different. He would go out onto the battlefields and come home. I'd have my batteries recharged. He'd be in a good mood, and from that. So that is the personalisation side of the funding. But personalisation is also more than that, because it's all about all of the community, building community capacity work that goes on. So through his paid carer taking him to the reenactments, he then met genuine friends. Not that his PAs aren't genuine friends, but they are paid to be in his life. He then met friends that also could offer informal care and support for him to do other things. And it's resulted in Alexander having a reenacting family that really love and care for him. And gradually, over the years, the paid PA support has stepped back, and the genuine friendship relationships have stepped in, and so it's given him a much more rounded life. And that's all because we simply asked Alexander, what do you want to do with your life? Quite a simple question that has made so much difference. And I guess through having Alex and through finding out about personal budgets, then when my mother became very, very ill with dementia, I'd already started on that journey. And when my mum needed to go into a care home, I wasn't given an option of personal budgets, but I knew about them. And so I took control. And although they weren't very happy that I knew all about personal budgets, I did ask that my mum remain at home and that we directed our own care. And I ended up having mum at home for 10 years and having, I organised what we called Audrey's Angels. My mum was called Audrey, and we called them, I called them my Audrey's Angels. So I employed 15 carers. Mum had 2-to-1 care for seven days a week, 24 hours a day. She had care. So I did employ 15 carers for her. And what was so wonderful about the fact that my mum was at home was that we were able to spend really good quality time together. I didn't have to drive to a care home and almost make appointments. Mum was still in her own home and she wanted to be there. That was her absolute wish, that she stayed in her own home. She had her community around her still, who popped in, who asked her if she wanted library books. So she still had that contact with her community. And I was so pleased that my mother was actually allowed to die in her own bedroom, in her own bed, with all of her family around her, drinking champagne. And we'd actually discussed that is how she wanted to go. So I feel that she was very lucky and that I was very privileged to be with her in the right setting when she died. And so for us, it was a really good death. And I think that's also such an important thing that personalised care and support can give us all. So yeah.
That's such a powerful story, and I know that that will sort of ring a lot of bells for a lot of people. I know that when my mum passed 10 years ago, she always wanted to be in her home. That was her one thing. And obviously that will change for everybody. Everyone will have a different experience. Everyone will have a different end of life program. But it's so good that you were able to do that. And that's what personalization means. It's such a empty word until you actually put those type of stories into it. You realize that, talking about how she had people around her, that's what she wanted, that's what it means. And sometimes we're so divorced from the reality and people's feelings. Even you hear people talking about COVID-19 and older people, and it's awful, but when you think about it, you're really just giving people a life, and whatever that means. But I would say that, that's really powerful. And what I wanted to understand is, why do you think they were upset that you even knew about personal budgets? I don't get that.
No, well, it was almost like I said something quite rude to the lady when I said, could I have a personal budget? She looked at me and she went, how on earth do you know about those? And I think it was maybe she was worried that maybe she didn't know about them very much. She certainly didn't seem to understand what they were, because when I mentioned direct payments, she said, you can pay for your care through a direct debit if you want. And I said, no, it's a direct payment for care. So I think there was a little bit around the person that was assessing my mum not having the adequate training, and then maybe feeling a little bit awkward, and that came out as being defensive.
And what do you think is the effect of cuts? And I definitely want to bring Isaac into this later as well. But from your point of view, we talked before about austerity when we were preparing for this, and the feeling that maybe that had an effect on the availability of things like personalization and personal budgets and independence fund.
Yeah.
There's lots of different things. So what do you think has been the impact of that from people that you've spoken to?
So we started out with personal budgets being very flexible and really being in the spirit of what personalisation was about. What's happened for certainly the people that I care for and in my circle of friends and who I work with, they're all saying the same thing. And that is, over the last sort of 15 years, those budgets have been, and the ethos of personalisation and personalised care and support has been eroded away to being much more managed and much more stifled. Certainly, with the closure of the Independent Living Fund, that was a huge blow for independent living. And when that happened, I also haven't mentioned it. I have my stepdaughter lives with me. She has very, very high care and support needs, and so she has a personal budget. And so both my son and my stepdaughter did rely heavily on the Independent Living Fund. When that was cut and closed, although the funding was given to our local authority, it wasn't ring fenced. And ultimately, both my son and Hannah had their budgets cut, which meant that actually I had to make a PA redundant who'd been with us for 20 years. So he'd been employed by us for 20 years, and that was such a sad day. And it's had a huge impact. Austerity has unfortunately devastated, and I don't use that word lightly, the relationship between people who use services, disabled people, carers, and their local authorities. And certainly the social workers that I've had I've been very fortunate to have very good social workers, but 2 of my social workers have left, and both of them said they couldn't work in a way that they wanted to, because they were enemies of the people that they worked with, because they couldn't give the people that they worked with what they needed, and yet they were enemies of their managers because they were constantly at loggerheads with their managers telling them that they couldn't provide what they needed, and they ended up leaving. And I think austerity has really damaged the relationship. I know that I am very, very fearful every time it comes to Alex and Hannah's review. Every time I get a brown envelope through the door that has, I know that's come from social care, it is quite frightening. So when we started the journey into COVID, we were at a very difficult stage anyway. And my wish and hope is that COVID isn't blamed for a lot of the relationship damage that was done prior to COVID, because it wasn't great.
And I mean, it's terrible to hear that you're fearful of those reviews. I know that
terrible.
When we have them, because you always know the agenda of them, underlying them, and that's to save money.
Yeah.
And so it's awful to hear from your perspective, because that would change your lives and the lives of the people that you love so much. And also, again, like Isaac was saying, it's so important to have that human element, but the way that you don't have the resources through austerity to pay for the support, then those relationships are really damaged, and that's what care is about. It's about relationships. So that is really, really sad to hear. In terms of how that COVID has affected you, do you feel that you've been able to manage that okay, or is there more that we should be doing? I know you're doing a lot of campaigning in the organisations you're in at the moment.
So it's had a massive effect because of shielding. My partner has just overcoming cancer. He has a condition that means that he won't ever overcome it, but and he takes medication that suppresses his immune system. So he is in a shielding category. My stepdaughter's shielding, and we actually decided to stop all care coming in 12 weeks ago. So ultimately that meant that my partner and I were the only carers. So we've actually worked 7 days a week, 68 hours a week, because that's how many hours there are in a week, but we chose to do that. And we're actually in the privileged position that there were both of us. And so my stepdaughter needs 2 to 1 for hoisting, I'm there. My stepdaughter needs 2 to 1 for bathing, I'm there. We're in a privileged position that we could do that. It has been hard work. And I must say that on a Thursday evening, when we were all out there clapping for carers, clapping for care workers and key workers, I wonder how many people even thought about the unpaid carer that was at home working 68 hours a week. Probably not very many. So yeah, I think we ought to really give unpaid carers such a big clap for all the work they've done, particularly over this last 12 weeks.
I've got to say you're incredible, because having to deal with everything you're dealing with your family, with all the responsibilities, and then you are helping them by putting extra stress really on yourself to make sure that they're safe. It blows my mind. It's amazing.
But you do that for your family.
You do that, but you definitely no, it is really wonderful. I'm sure that many people will agree. And also you're championing even for the sector as well. You're trying to advocate for carers' rights and other things as well.
I think that's just so important. And Isaac and I, we work for Think Local at Personal and the National Co-Production Advisory Group, and that gives us inroads to, and how we met you, Sophie, at various meetings that we've been invited to because of the heart. I think Isaac touched on the word co-production, but without working all together, services are meaningless. When Alex was given a service without working with me, it was meaningless. And it actually, I don't like to, you don't like to think about money, but it was a waste of money. And co-production can actually save money, because working together is absolutely key. But one thing I would say about co-production is that you can't train people in co-production, because what's so important about co-production is what comes underneath the word. So if co-production is the tip of the iceberg, what's underneath in that water, underneath that iceberg, is all about relationships and trust, change of culture, all of those sort of relationship and humanistic is what is underneath that, what underpins that, and that takes time. And so it's difficult to parachute into an organisation or explain what co-production is without embedding that time to make sure that all of those humanistic relationships are there and working, because that's the only way co-production will be authentic.
There you go. You've heard it from the horse's mouth, not like in that way, but
well, thank you.
But you heard it from the professional, the person who knows. Co-production, you need to do co-production, you need to do more of it. But what I would also say on that point, I actually did, talking about that iceberg, I did a podcast with Kat Duncan-Rees, and she talked about that. And I've been sitting on that podcast because everything's been so rushed, and we are going to release it hopefully tomorrow. So people do tune in, follow us on Twitter or whatever to find out when that's available, to explain that iceberg in a little bit more detail. But
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kat, Isaac and I work together. So yeah, we all love the iceberg analogy.
Exactly. And then she talks about pirates and everything else.
Yes, absolutely.
People will know once they listen to the podcast.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to bring Isaac back in because we've got a few questions for both of you. And before I go into them, I want to ask about, there's a spotlight on social care now, and I feel like we should be thinking about campaigning for more for social care. And there's going to be a lot of people trying to do that. What should we be prioritizing when we're asking for extra support or funding or reviews or whatever it is? Isaac?
So for me, it is to recognize that the relationship between people that had care and support needs and the system is really broken and damaged. And COVID is a great opportunity to really ask and demand a better funding solution for social care. Social care has been the correlation of health, and I think throughout austerity, and Kat, who developed the iceberg, and under that iceberg, if we'd really focused on the human relationship, so quality, transparency, access, human to human connection, we wouldn't have found ourselves in this really challenging situation. The system has focused on some of those system problems, which has really taken away those human to human connections. Sally talked about the brown envelopes. Most of us don't have access to a health and social care professional. You might see someone once a year, and someone comes in and does that assessment and asks you those questions about the worst possible things in your life, then comes out with a suggestion of what support you might need. It has to be based on human connections, real relationships, and it must be. And for me, I don't think in this country we value disabled people in the way that we should do. We need to move into a space where we see people being, with the right support, being able to do anything. And we talk about independence. And as someone that had so many care and support plans written about me, not Coproduce, written about me, and they often talked about being independent. So I was independent, but miserable. I never had any human to human connections. I wasn't connected to my community. So it's how are we interdependent with each other, and how are we able to, where possible, is be independent as possible. And you only do that by power sharing, minimizing some of those barriers, and really listening to what people say and need. And we can't get away from the fact that unless we have a properly funded funding solution for social care, will always be in this challenge. So people do really, really well with the right support, but that needs to be funded. The relationship stuff needs to be worked on. And I wonder how we've moved into a space only 5, 6, 10 weeks ago where we were talking about low skilled workers. Now our PAs and now our frontline staff, our nurses, all of those people, we're saying highly skilled. They've saved people's lives. They've gone above and beyond. I can't even tell you about PAs. If I told you what PAs do on a daily basis, they're counsellors, they're practical support, they're emotional support, they're advocates, they are everything. And as long as we continue that kind of relationship of not valuing that, these workers, these people, we'll find it really challenging. My dog, see, that's life. You're mute, Sophie.
Thank you. I was just saying that someone else needs your attention. So yeah, no, that's great. It's life. Yeah, I would say that that's really good points, and I really appreciate you sharing those. Again, going back to, we need to be asking more funding, and we need to be concentrating on relationships and going out and speaking to people with lived experience and making sure they're involved in the conversation. And the stuff about skilled and low skilled, it's just so insulting when people talk about care workers as the skills deficiency. It's ridiculous. Having worked in it, it's unfair. So that definitely needs to be addressed. Sally, what do you think we need to concentrate when we're lobbying for more support for care?
So Isaac's touched on funding, but if I can give you an example of Alex. So Alex decided that he wanted to leave home. We are lucky enough to have a cottage at the bottom of our garden, and he wanted to move into the cottage. It did mean that he would need one-to-one support, rather than going into a block purchased supported living environment. And actually it took 2 years to get him into that cottage. It took him to have 3 episodes of problems with his mental health. And it took it going to panel about 8 times. Now, every time it goes to panel, we're not represented. The people on the panel don't know who Alexander is, don't know who I am, and don't know the relationship. And the cost of that was immense, because every time it was a new assessment. I think he had something like 5 assessments in that time. And one of them almost had to go to court because the assessment was proved to be illegal. So we had 2 years of trauma. And actually, in the end, I requested that one of the managers on the panel came to see me at home. They came to see me at home. Within 5 minutes, she looked at me and she said, I get it now. Alex has we have chickens, we live off grid. Alex can't stand living with people around him. So we live off grid. We have chickens, we have dog, we have cats. They're all his responsibility. And once she'd met the chickens and the dog and seen the cottage, she just knew it was right for him. And within about 3 or 4 weeks, we got the funding and he was in. Now, that human relationship and that human understanding has been lost when it comes to getting the right funding for making sure that people get the best care and support and the best lives. Alex is now in his home at the bottom of the garden with the right support, and my goodness, it has made him blossom. So it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think more people need to be hearing these experiences. So if you are watching, don't forget to share this, because we want as many people to hear this. This is just golden. And the usual, subscribe and like it. And so that will help with the algorithm. So it will come to more people's feeds. Go to questions. We've got a couple of minutes left. Somebody asked, what advice would you give to help other families who want to follow your journey? That came up when you were talking, Sally, but they have clarified they wouldn't mind both of you giving a bit of a response to that. Sally, did you want to start off?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I run a support group, a local support group for families who have people they care for with autism and Asperger's syndrome. And yeah, I would say take control. You need to take control. You need to talk to other families that have been on this journey. It's really important to talk with other people that have experienced what you want to have in your life. And so I spend quite a lot of time talking to families and encouraging them to be the one in control. I'll even help people write letters to their local authority. But that is key for me, is become informed, talk to other people, talk to other families in peer support. You're on mute, Sophie.
I keep doing this. Sorry, I'm so you got
Zoom bingo.
I'm not even doing like what I should be doing. Isaac, did you want to add anything to that?
So, Sally, spot on peer support, but it's a little bit of a personal thing, just to let you know that we people with lived experience and carers are there for you. So please don't feel alone. We have been there. Reach out, you'll find us, you'll have peer support networks. We are there to help you. It makes such a difference. It can be really terrifying, scary, but ultimately when you reach out and you connect with people like myself and Sally and other wonderful people, it is liberating, life-changing. So don't be scared. It's your life, it's your rights, and you've got to stand up for those.
Oh, that's very kind for you to add that. And on that point, if anybody wanted to engage with you or the organisations you're involved with, I don't know what's best, what you'd prefer. What's the best way for them to do that? To find you on Twitter? I know you are on LinkedIn and everything else. Is that the best way to do that for both of you?
I have a website, which is South Lakeland Autism and Asperger's Syndrome Support Group. Unfortunately, the acronym is SLAG, South Lakes Autism Group. I didn't think about that when I named it.
No, obviously not.
But I have a website. My mobile number's on there. People can get in contact contact with me, or through Think Local Act Personal TLAP. But yeah, you know, I'm available.
Oh, that's wonderful. Doing everything at home and available for anybody else as well. That's wonderful. We will put that in the description of the video as well, that website link. And Isaac, for you, is it the socials best to get, maybe ask you a
social
question?
media via Sally? Reach out, you'll find me. I pop up when you Google me, I'll come up, my number's there. One of the things that I should probably say today, most of all, Carers Week. So Sally and I spend our evenings on the phone to people, helping them, not because not because of any other reason, and we love doing it. We know we make a difference, and people really help us as well. And other carers, other people with lived experience have made such a difference. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle choice for us. And we're 24/7s we're doing this, and peer support is a game changer. When you find yourself really stuck, reach out. There are people there.
Thank you. I mean, I often talk about social care being full of selfless people, and I definitely feel like I've spoken to two very selfless people tonight. So thank you both so very much. I have one little question, and I know we're slightly running over, but like with your own well-being, with everything that you're doing, how do you look after you? Because I think that's so important. I'd hate for either of you to feel run down with it. You've got to protect yourselves as well. How do you do that with everything that's going on? Maybe
well, I'll answer that, and I will demonstrate.
You wouldn't necessarily advocate that for everything, but it is your birthday.
No, it is my birthday. No, my self-care is doing this stuff, because if I didn't do this stuff, then I'd be at a loss. And I do, as Isaac said, we do it because we love it. It's a way of life, and it's what we're passionate about. And take away that passion, we'd be lost. And it is the fact that I actually get so much more from it. I run an autism support group, and people will ring me when they've just had their child or an adult son diagnosed. And I have to say that autism and a learning disability and mental health has actually given me more than it's taken from me. And I wouldn't change a thing.
Wow. Thank you for that. Isaac?
So reaching out to other people, so the likes of Sally, the likes of Kat, and have been able to have spaces where people connect. So for me, I'm always on the phone problem solving with someone else. And what I found in my journey and on my journey, people are so giving of their time, but so real and so honest. And self-care is really, really, because when you are doing this kind of work, it often feels like you're the lone voice, but to have a circle of people around you that have the same values, are saying the same thing, and reach out. The other thing is fun. It can be really, really fun, and we do have a good laugh, and we're able to laugh.
We do have a good laugh.
Yeah. Great. So, I can sense it. I feel like one time we need to have like some kind of group Zoom thing with Kat involved and some other people, and just do something fun, like a fun quiz with dress up. I reckon you'd all be up for that.
Oh, we would.
Okay, well, I could literally talk to you for hours. It's been lovely. As you can tell, I keep forgetting to go off mute because I'm just so engaged. I hope everyone else enjoyed it, and I'm going to let you both go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on this evening. Thank you. And happy birthday, Sally.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I cut him. I always cut people off. So yeah, there you have it. Two fantastic people. And I just really enjoy speaking to them, and I hope you did too. And that was so warming. It was actually a lovely thing to do on an evening. And they just brightened up and enlightened me definitely during this chat. And I suppose last thing to say is that we are back again next week, of course, every week. And I'm going to have a politician on. I'm going to have Liz Kendall. So we did touch on politics a little bit. Now Liz is the shadow secretary in the Labour Party for care, and you've probably seen her on the news, you've probably seen her talk a lot, and she has some really interesting views about how care should change and develop and what we should be doing. So I would really urge you to get your questions in for her as much as possible. So tell people that you know that we're going to be talking to her. Join in the live stream if you can next week, and if you like our Facebook page, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, however you're engaging with us today, you'll find out when we're going live with Liz. And of course, if you're not able to do that right now, you can also just follow us on Twitter, because we make sure that we keep people up to date with everything we're doing on Twitter as well. So that's the way we're doing it. There's our socials. We've got our website if you want to check that out, www.coproducecare.com. So feel free to engage with us and contact us through that if you have ideas of people you want us to ask to come on to the live stream. Then we're guided by you. This is all about people who are involved in care, people experiencing care, or just curious about care. Then let us know who you want us to reach out to. As you know, we have more in-depth conversations rather than sort of like 10-15-minute interviews with people that you might see on the news. So it's a great time to engage and ask those questions, and we're just creating a space for people to do that. So that's pretty much it from me, and thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do share as much as you can, because I think what Isaac and Sally had to say today was just really fantastic. I think people will learn a lot. So thank you very much, everyone, and take care.